The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you had a great weekend. All right, your boy is back on a Monday. Man, I haven't done a actual me podcast episode on a Monday in a long time. But in all honesty, I really felt compelled yesterday to record this to kind of catch you guys up on really the two events so far in 2025 that have obviously taken place, and that being what is being called a terrorist attack in New Orleans with that dude, and then the guy in Las Vegas that supposedly, and more on why I use the word supposedly later, but, you know, the dude that blew himself up in the Cybertruck in front of Trump Tower. So, okay, man, there was a lot of stuff that happened over the weekend. And by the way, the most interesting thing is none of this stuff obviously is playing out for the most part in the mainstream media. Definitely not, the places that, maybe a lot of you get your news from, and that is, the mainstream media, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, even Fox. Now, Fox, I will say, Fox, News Nation, the New York Post, those are all definitely right-wing media outlets. So think of them as like Republican focused, whereas ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC are definitely Democrat focused and Democrat leaning. So liberal leaning, whereas Fox, the New York Post, Newsmax, News Nation, you guys might even not even know a few of those, but those are definitely conservative right leaning. So not a ton of this is playing out on the left-leaning stuff, but it is playing out a little more on the right-leaning stuff. And that right there, to me, is a telltale sign of this, there being more to this than meets the eye. If all of the news is not covering something, I really feel like that's starting to show me that the narrative being created is being driven, honestly, by one party. And in this case, it's the Republican Party. So more on that here in a little bit. And I think when I play you the clips and talk through the things I talk through, that'll make more sense. And again, remember, if you guys right now, if any of you are like super Republican, super Trump fans, all that, that's fine. You know I don't have an issue with that. But I'm asking you to rise to 30,000 feet and just take this in with your lens of common sense, okay? Take this in with your lens of common sense. All right, this might be interesting for you guys. I'll give you a little sneak peek into the creative process. So I recorded like 20 minutes of this podcast, and to be honest with you, I kind of got I was like, wow, this got really complicated. And my goal, obviously, is always to deep, shallow dive and dumb everything down. I don't mean that as an insult. I really don't. But it just got a little convoluted because I was trying to describe all of the crazy shenanigans about the Shamsa dude in New Orleans, and then pivot into all the crazy shenanigans about the guy in Las Vegas. And I'll be honest, it's just too much. It's too much to handle in one episode because I was 20 minutes in and literally not even done with one of them. So I did not want to have like a 45-minute episode. So instead, I went for a run, and then I came back from the run and I was like, you know what? I'm going to cut out all this back half stuff. And today I will focus on the Las Vegas Cybertruck thing, because this one to me is the bigger convoluted mess, okay? And in many ways, it's kind of the bigger, I'm going to swear for a second, the bigger mind fuck that's going on. And it really kind of is, because again, you've got a guy that is a decorated Green Beret, decorated military officer, unbelievably capable of really John Rambo, Jason Bourne type stuff.
That's Jason Bourne.
Exactly. And so There's so much sus and goofy things that are now being uncovered. And there's a guy that I love. I'm going to try and get him on the podcast. He's actually good friends with James Lee, whom I did an episode with last week. But his name is Ian Carroll. And this guy is excellent. He really is an unbelievable, independent investigative journalist that always does such a nice job in really calling a spade and just cutting through tremendously complicated amounts of stuff and doing a really good job of explaining things. And he's a great storyteller. And so this is so funny and so organic at how this happened. But I was texting with my friend Catherine. I've talked about her before. She used to have the nickname Scoop, although she doesn't scoop me that much stuff. Oh, yeah, actually, she does. She does. All right, my bad. My bad, Catherine. My bad, Catherine. Anyway, I was having a text message with her, and I wrote, these quote-unquote terror attacks are just so sus. And then we went back and forth. I love that, 50-year-olds are using the word sus together. So then I wrote her, I said, I need to try to figure out how to better articulate what I'm feeling. But I feel like right now there's a reverse psyop going on. And psyop, by the way, is psychological operation. It's basically like a mind fuck, like a Jedi mind trick. So I said, I feel like right now there's a reverse psyop going on, especially with the Cybertruck thing in Las Vegas. And then she wrote me back. She says, yes, it's like a number of us have gotten too smart for a straight psyop. And so now they know that. So now they have to hit us with the Uno reverse card. And then she sends me this video from Ian Carroll, which I had literally just reposted on the Deep Shallow Dive Instagram page. And I was about to send it to her. And so she sends me the same exact video. And so I text her back, oh my God, I literally was just about to send this to you because I just posted it. And then I wrote her, this is effing crazy. I just posted that 2 minutes ago, and he articulated everything I was wanting to say. And so there you go. And now let's jump into this Ian Carroll clip, and I will chime in a few things along the way, but he does a ridiculously good job of kind of laying out all the facts as we had them. And this was probably on Saturday. This was actually on Saturday that he posted this.
So the Tesla Cybertruck car bombing in Las Vegas has turned into the craziest reverse psyop story ever. And it's still developing, but I'm going to run through all of the evidence in all directions that I have found so far, so hopefully it's easy to kind of pick up where we're at right now and see what comes next. First thing, super iconic, not an accident. But the question is, not an accident, why? And who's actually behind it?
Okay, and again, when he says super iconic, he's pointing to the Tesla in front of Trump Tower. So obviously, because of the relationship between Elon Trump, oh, that's actually funny, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, this happening the way it did, honestly, in my opinion, the long story short of it is both these events in Las Vegas and New Orleans are going to be the first in a series of events to create an opportunity for more defense budget spending needs to combat war against China and war against Iran. That's what it's all about. And rekindling, the war on terror and all of that. That's the summary of it, really. Or that's the long-term goal. And I honestly think these two were the first two in what is going to be a bunch of these type things to try to, like I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, I'm going to keep hammering this point, create another 9/11 type event to rally public support in order to have billions of dollars allocated for military-industrial complex defense spending.
Because the media is pinning everything on Matthew Allen Livelsberger because they found his passport and his ID and a bunch of stuff of his in the car.
All right, I have a feeling he'll talk about this, but these passports, how crazy is it that these paper passports, just like Muhammad Atta's passport in 9/11, which survived the plane crashing into the tower crumbling, but then they found the passport within all the rubble in perfect condition. This Matthew guy's passport, they found his passport in the blown up, completely ashed out insides of the Tesla, but they found the passport and his military ID in perfect condition.
Though the car blew up, passports always survive. And he's an active duty Green Beret that's been stationed mostly out of Germany and Colorado. And the Green Beret community is digging into this deep and getting sources. And there's so much that's not adding up. And then yesterday, I think it was, the plot super duper thickened when the Sean Ryan show.
All right, so let me chime in a second here. So if you're not familiar with this guy, Sean Ryan, and the Sean Ryan show, it's literally one of the biggest podcasts out there. It absolutely rivals Joe Rogan's numbers. And, depending on the week, sometimes his ratings are higher than Joe Rogan's. And the thing about this Sean Ryan guy is up until now and up until recent, actually, up until this thing that he did starting Friday and this interview, the guy was thought of as kind of like a god, and he was thought of as like a truth teller. And I honestly think this entire interview that he's doing with this quote unquote whistleblower is and has totally worked against him and kind of exposed him to basically be a working, CIA asset and agent. And I'll share more about that as we get into it. And again, I'm talking about Sean Ryan, not Ian Carroll. Ian does a good job of actually exposing him.
And then yesterday, I think it was, the plot super duper thickened when the Sean Ryan show had this whole expose on this whistleblower scenario where he had Sam Shoemate on, who had apparently gotten an email from this Green Beret dude.
So basically this Sam Schumann guy claimed that this Matthew Livelsberger sent him an email either like December 29th or December 30th, and basically was like telling him what was going to happen. So he sends this email to Sean Ryan, and then the Sean Ryan podcast basically is the one that posts the email. But the email is so sus, and we'll talk about some of the things in a second. But then here's the other thing that I've realized is, when something super, super big and important and truthful happens, and it's only getting covered by like a podcast, that's just narrative creation. It's narrative creation. And, I have a podcast, and I'll say this, present company included, don't believe everything you hear on a podcast, because podcasts are just that person's opinion, just like this one is just my opinion. And don't believe everything I say. I mean, I would like you to believe everything I say, but you're welcome to check things out. And you're also welcome to obviously not agree with me. Maybe believe is the wrong word, but not agree with me for sure. But anyway, so the Sean Ryan podcast gets this quote unquote whistleblower, Sam Schumann, and they just made it to be such a big ordeal. It looked too sus, and it looked so premeditated.
The day before the bombing. And the email is crazy spicy, but it's a little suspicious. If you haven't seen the Sean Ryan Show podcast episode yet, you should watch at least the first 30 to 45 minutes. Put it on 2 times speed. You should not believe everything that is said at face value. Remember, both these guys are military intelligence assets, former and current.
All right, so I did watch the episode, and again, he's right. Both of these guys are military intelligent assets, former and current. They both are. And then secondly, like I said, when you watch the episode, it's just overreacting. Like they're like two dudes trying to be dramatic. And again, it works against them because it just comes off fake.
This is the alleged email that Mr. Shoemate received, but notice that there are spell check red squigglies in here, and there's a cursor, and we've learned this before. This is not how an email appears when it is received in your inbox.
So what he's saying is the email that Sean Ryan posted, and I mean, this thing got like millions and millions of views. And this is really where everything started to fall apart. The email had, the red squigglies underneath misspelled words or grammatically incorrect words. And then also at one point between the paragraphs, you could see a dash, which signified where the cursor was. So that's not what an email looks like when it comes into your inbox. That's what an email looks like when you're still editing it and it's still in draft mode and you haven't sent it. So all these people on Twitter especially basically are like, dude, this Sam guy he sent himself this email, and look, the way the email is currently framed with the squigglies and the cursor, that shows that he was typing it out and he hadn't sent it yet, but for whatever reason, he screenshot it and sent that to the Sean Ryan show. And that was the other thing that was shady, was he didn't forward the email, it was a screenshot of the email.
This is how an email appears when you're typing it. But this is what the Sean Ryan show put out as the email that was received, allegedly. And it alleges that the drones over the East Coast are Chinese tech and that they could bomb the White House at any minute. And it's like this whole, basically it alleges that World War III is about to happen between the U.S. and China, and there's nothing we can do to stop it.
Okay, so here it is. Here's important takeaway from this entire thing is everything about this email, everything about Sean Ryan, everything about this guy, Sam Shoebox or whatever his name is, it is all about narrative creation, that these drones that were in the East Coast that we talked about them, we've seen them over the past 2 weeks. It's all about the narrative creation that this is all China. They're basically infiltrating our country. These sleeper cells are getting activated. Now that they're going to pin on Iran and more a Middle Eastern thing. But basically, they're creating the narrative that, hey, we need more military budget. And then the second part, which could be even the more important part, is this is a way to basically start more surveillance domestically here in the United States. So it's just another way to lock you down and to track you.
And he's like trying to be a whistleblower to like stop it. But if this email is real, it's like the perfect food for the military-industrial complex and for World War III warmongering.
See, I'm not the only one that says this stuff. So again, if this is real, which it's not, it's the perfect fuel or food for military-industrial complex and World War III more warmongering, which, by the way, I don't think there's ever going to be a World War III, but the threat of World War III will allocate billions and billions and billions of more of your tax dollars, and then also the need to, again, create more lockdown or surveillance type features.
But it gets weirder. So the Las Vegas officials and the FBI, who are totally trustworthy, have been assessing the scene. Hey, Gigi, don't do that. Stay over there. That's where they found the passport. They also found an incinerated desert eagle, which apparently he used to shoot himself in the head before the explosion.
That's funny. He's like walking his dog while he's making this video. Okay, let me talk about this for a second. So they found an incinerated desert eagle. Desert eagle is like an unbelievably powerful, if not supposedly one of the most powerful, handguns out there. And that's what he supposedly used to kill himself. And here's the two things that are crazy about that. The gun was found dropped below him, right? Incinerated, like basically into dust. So that unbelievably heavy-duty metal gun was completely burnt to chars. But again, the passport and his military ID, those things survived intact, just being frayed a little bit on the outside. But the gun?
It was dropped on the floor right in between his feet in the driver's seat. And if you know anything about how powerful these guns are, and you imagine shooting yourself in the head with it and then it dropping straight down instead of like just flying into the
By the way, another thing on the gun, and nobody's really pointed this out, and that is that in the the many seconds of footage of the Cybertruck before it explodes, you never see a gunshot go off. You never see that crazy spark of a gunshot going off. So when did he kill himself? if you look at the videos of the Cybertruck, I mean, it's a good 5 to maybe 10 seconds where it's just the truck is just sitting there and then it explodes. So it's kind of like, where is the footage of the gun firing and creating that crazy spark before it blows up? It's not there. And obviously, if there was a surveillance camera that was capturing all of it, it should have captured when he allegedly, unalived himself with that gun. But you don't see that at all.
Not to mention that no one has reported any report from a gunshot in the car at the scene at the time, and that is like the most powerful handgun you can buy.
There you go. There's another good point. Nobody reported hearing a gunshot.
A whole conspiracy on this thread is Teslas can drive themselves, and I don't know if anyone's ever tested the self-driving, because it'll watch you, and if you don't look upwards, it'll tell you to look, or it'll stop the self-driving, so you can't just look down at your phone or close your eyes and go to sleep. But has anyone ever tried it with a dead body that has its eyes open? Because that is probably possible. It's unclear.
Okay, so basically there he's saying, and there's a whole thread on this on Twitter, it's insane, where people are like, he was already dead. The Tesla drove itself to that spot. Now, again, a lot of people chimed in and said, if you've ever used the autopilot feature of a Tesla, it's unbelievably detailed to where if you take your hands off the wheel, or if you close your eyes, or if you're like looking down on at your phone, basically it will kind of take you out of auto drive feature, or it'll tell you it's going to take you out of auto drive feature in a way to make sure, even though you're not technically driving the car, you are alert while the autopilot is taking place. So anyway, who knows about that? But that kind of plays into a lot of people, starting to question if it really was this Matthew guy sitting there and who was in that seat, basically.
Because allegedly the remains of the person found in the front seat, though charred, burnt beyond recognition, the DNA did not match the DNA of this guy's recent child.
So this was another report. They said that the DNA of whomever they found didn't match the DNA of his recent kid. Now, it's interesting. I haven't heard anything from the ex-wife. I guess he had just gotten divorced or was divorced. So we haven't really heard anything from the ex-wife. All I saw is one video of them.
Apparently his wife just broke up with him, and they were trying to paint that as like he's angry. It's like Green Berets get divorces all the time. Like maybe the kid wasn't his kid. I think it's more likely that the body wasn't his body. Because again, in the email that was allegedly sent by him, theoretically, it's very clear that he's not planning to kill himself. He's planning to escape to Mexico and to do this whole thing in order to bring attention to this and to whistleblow and to be taken seriously and to get this out to as much news and publicity as possible and then escape to Mexico. He says it 2 different times in this email.
So this is where like the crazy misdirection and who the hell knows comes into play, because again, in the email, he's portraying himself as a whistleblower in the email. And I remember he says something about this all has to happen before December 31st because I leave December 31st. That's what he wrote in the email. But again, by I leave, I don't think he was meaning I'm going to leave the earth. I think he was basically escaping to Mexico.
The trunk was loaded up with all these crazy fireworks, and there was some gas cans in the cab that caused the explosion to it's a little unclear. But it seems like the explosion was intended to not cause a bunch of death, but just to cause a scene. Like he chose a Cybertruck, which is bulletproof, like the worst car to build a car bomb in. And then he filled it with fireworks instead of he's a Green Beret. He could have built a real high power IED that could have blown the building up.
So on Twitter, there were a bunch of military guys that chimed in, and they basically said, as a Green Beret, dude, this was like the work of a Boy Scout. The way he did everything was like a Boy Scout. There's no way a Green Beret would be this sloppy with everything. A Green Beret would be totally T's crossed and I's dotted. And then somebody else was pointing out, why would you rent a Tesla Cybertruck? That's like the most trackable vehicle ever. I mean, I think with all of the technology and Christ, Elon Musk himself calling Tesla a data company, they would have so many ways to monitor that vehicle and to monitor where you're getting your charges at, the charging stations, where you are geographically because of the fact that you're running on an electrical battery. Like, why would you buy a vehicle that's like the most trackable vehicle on the planet?
And then he says in the letter that he's trying to keep a low profile because he's being followed and they attempted to abduct him, but also that he's trying to keep a high profile because they know he has this IED, this car bomb rigged up. And so he got a Cybertruck, which is like, why would you get a Cybertruck? The police have had no trouble tracking the Cybertruck, both in Las Vegas on CCTV footage and on its supercharger route across the country. The police said that they have tracked the purchase of the firearm, specifically the Desert Eagle, back in Colorado. There's a 3-day wait on purchasing a firearm in Colorado, so we had to have initiated the purchase 3 days before leaving Colorado to come to Las Vegas for this event. But then in the email, he gives as confirmation that he is who he says he is. First off, I'm not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification.
Okay, so again, the internet, man, the internet is legit. The internet is based. So then all these people started researching the public records and I don't even know what else, DMV records or something, but they basically went down the rabbit hole of trying to vet out what he basically just said about my first vehicle.
Well, people verified. People pulled his vehicle records, and actually he has never owned a 1996, was it? Ford Mustang, or 2006 Ford Mustang, but his first car was a Ford Mustang, just totally different year. So it's not really could be that because it's 30 years ago, it's his own car 20 years ago and he just forgot the year. It could be why would you put the wrong verification in? You'd think if it was someone else faking the letter, they would get the right verification because they wanted it to get verified. You'd think if it was him, maybe he misremembered it. Maybe it's an intentional misverification. People are like, oh, maybe it was in his parents' name because everyone's first cars are in their parents' name. Well, people pulled his parents' car records too. Check out Landry22 if you want to see those on X.
Okay, so basically all these people on the internet pretty much disproved what he said or whomever said in the email about my first car being this Ford Mustang. It's pretty insane, man. People are investigative journalist sleuths, man. I'm telling you, I think this all started because of the Gaza stuff, but man, they've created monsters out there. People are just relentless at their desire to basically call bullshit on everybody.
But then the Las Vegas police, the officials, released manifestos that they found on his phone, which was charred to oblivion. But they found these manifestos that this one is basically yo, all military personnel go and take the Capitol right now. It's really unhinged and retarded.
I love that he uses the word retarded. I'm going to start using it more. I just am. Okay, so the other thing, by the way, that a bunch of people pointed out, he might talk about it, but I know he actually posted a graphic in another Twitter post. But he basically said, hey, by the way, why have they still not been able to get into the phone of the kid that tried to assassinate Trump in Pennsylvania? But literally the next day, they were able to hack or tap into the phone of a Army Green Beret and get all this quote unquote stuff on there, including him having manifestos telling the military to charge the Capitol. That's just unhinged and retarded.
And the other one, it's just screenshot and read if you want. The other one is just so weird. Then they released video from his Tesla Cybertruck at the supercharge station that they said was in Las Vegas, but the internet has sleuthed around and pretty much confirmed that actually that was not in Las Vegas. It was in Arizona because there's a Carl's Jr. Next to the supercharge station. They were looking for photos where there's a supercharge station and a Carl's Jr. and it's in Kingman, Arizona, which is that stop right there before getting to Las Vegas.
I mean, again, what's amazing is people on the internet, they're using Google Earth geo-navigational programs to basically call bullshit when someone says something and they're like, no, that wasn't in Arizona. That wasn't in Las Vegas. That was in Arizona. And here, I just proved it to you. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Plus the Green Beret chatter on YouTube and X and everyone in the Green Beret and like special forces communities that are commenting on this saying it does not line up at all. Like he did not have the expertise to understand this kind of stuff about drones. He did not have the clearance. He wasn't even like stationed in the places where they said he was stationed. It's all very sus.
Okay, so that part, just to clarify, they're saying he didn't have the expertise to talk about the drone stuff, which he talked about in the email. Earlier, I mentioned how the Green Beret community was saying that the bomb and the explosives and the way he blew things up in the Tesla and even using the Tesla did not match the MO of how a Green Beret would do that. But then what Ian's talking about is in the email that he supposedly sent, he laid out a bunch of technical stuff about how these are Chinese drones. And they're saying, hey, he would not know that information.
Not to mention that he was like a TV star with Tim Kennedy like 10 years ago on some like special forces like game show, TV show, whole other funny rabbit hole.
So that's another thing that came out. I guess he appeared on like a History Channel kind of competitive Green Beret type show. And so there were clips of him with this guy, Tim Kennedy, that came out on over the weekend. You know, I don't really put that much stock into that. I mean, obviously, even if that is true, you know, people can change over 10 years for sure.
But a bunch of guys know this guy. Like a bunch of people on the internet right now have done operations and missions with him or trained with him or been stationed with him. So there's a lot floating around and I don't have any answers. I don't know what's going on, but one thing that we can all agree on.
All right, this is great. I love what he says here. So pay some extra attention.
Is that if the evidence starts pointing towards a war with China or a war with Iran or a war with Russia, it's probably the deep state setting you up for that war. And if I had to guess right now, here's what I would guess was going on. The military-industrial complex is learning as we go, and they are wise to the way this world works. And seeing how X has debunked all their other bullshit this last year, I'd bet right now it looks like they decided, what if we need to start our psyops using the decentralized media space as our patsy, as our pipeline of information to deliver the information so that the internet thinks it's real.
So basically, that's the reverse psyop, and that's where Sean Ryan comes into it, and that's where people are like, wait a minute, you guys are doing this through Sean Ryan to make us think it's real because we've basically just spent the past year believing everything that Sean Ryan has told us. So I love it. I love the fact that people sniffed this out. Although I will say, when you read the threads, you know, there's obviously a large contingency of people that are defending Sean Ryan for sure and defending this Sam Shoegate or Shoe Space or whatever his name is, the whistleblower. But there's a giant group that are pretty much calling bullshit. And again, saying this is like a reverse psyop where they feed it to Sean Ryan, who supposedly is this Joe Rogan type truth teller with a gigantic audience. And if it's coming from him, then you're going to believe it. But it totally backfired, and it is backfiring.
So the internet thinks it's coming from inside the house, right? And so they concoct a situation in which a known and trusted and verified internet sleuth, this dude on Instagram, who is like a military whistleblower, like hub. He's like the dude for military whistleblowers to go to. It makes sense that this guy would go to him. And so they concoct this email that goes out to him, and they concoct this scenario whereby it looks like either they got this guy and he's on the payroll, like this Green Beret guy is like in the op, or they captured him and are using him as a patsy, as the fall guy for the op. And it looks like they're feeding the information out into sort of vetted social media decentralized channels so that we are the ones producing the psyop ourselves. And it's just the source information that is actually manipulated. That is what it looks like right now. And keep your eyes peeled, stay frosty, don't believe a single fucking thing you see.
I'm telling you, this Ian Carroll guy's super legit. So basically all of that, to me, it really lines up. And this is where, again, I think Sean Ryan and the Sean Ryan podcast and all of that. They're part of this. It's a Jedi mind trick. It's a Jedi mind trick. But let me let Ian get the last word.
And if any of it points to war with Iran or China or Russia, even if it seems credible, it's fucking not. Doesn't matter. We're not going to war. Fuck that shit.
All right. My guy definitely drops more F-bombs than I do. But again, the way he ended that was perfect. If anything is trying to drum up resources to go to war, whether it's with Russia, China, or Iran, then this is military-industrial complex at play. And again, they're creating and generating a system and a scenario to win over public support out of the fear of XYZ. And again, in my opinion, I don't think we'll ever go to war, and I don't think it'll ever get there, but it doesn't need to get there. The threat of it getting there is what enables bills to be passed, budgets to be allocated, people to be, in fear. Just think about how quickly people basically fell in line and did whatever they said to do when COVID happened in March of 2020. Seriously, that was like the case study of all case studies. Like, they got people to fall in line super fast. Now imagine how quickly that would happen, under the threat of war. That would probably work just as well, if not better. So again, that is a up-to-date and I think good summary and analysis of where things are in terms of, the cyber attack, or the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. I will do another episode talking about, kind of the things that are super sus that I see in regards to what's developed with the quote unquote terrorist attack in New Orleans. I literally was going to do both of these episodes in once, but it would have been twice as long and just a lot to grasp. So hopefully what we've talked about was, good enough to give you, really a good perspective of what I think is taking place and what Ian thinks is taking place. And again, like I said, and I don't actually know if I did say this earlier, but the fact that this is only getting really covered on the Sean Ryan podcast, that's weird to me. I mean, that's weird that's the entity that's breaking everything. You would think that if this was a credible email, that the FBI and CIA and every agency and every, the government would be taking the lead on it, not some random whistleblower. Or I'm sorry, not some random dude on a random podcast. Oh, I totally forgot this. So the other thing that was sus about Sean Ryan is, so on Friday, before this all went public, or before his episode aired, he posted this tweet. It said, "My family and I are disappearing for a few days. My account will be active, but it will not be me behind the wheel. What we are about to release is mind-boggling and will raise a lot of questions. All media requests need to go to my producer at SRS Jeremy." So that was like super ridiculous that he tweeted out, "My family and I are disappearing for a few days." It's like, dude, if you're disappearing for a few days, you don't need to tweet that out to the world. So that was another thing that I found incredibly sus. So anyway, there is all that. All right, call spade a spade, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll catch up soon.
That was a great way to end it.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.